It's after 9 o'clock. We're here for one item, and that's the nomination to the state superintendent, to be the state superintendent by Dr. Rodney Taylor. Obviously, we've had extensive hearings on the matter. Senator Johnson led the subcommittee hearing. And before I open it up to any questions or statements, I want to turn it to Senator Johnson. Do you have anything you want to say regarding the subcommittee process and what the committee recommended?
Subcommittee process, we again had a hearing, as you mentioned. We thought it was best to be as transparent and open. And since there were many questions by different senators, we invited the entire Senate to the subcommittee hearing to ask any questions that they had. That hearing lasted a little over 2 hours, and I feel like the committee and the Senate in general asked many questions. And when we voted in subcommittee, the vote was split 1-to-1. I broke the tie in favor of advising and consent to move him to the full committee because I felt like he answered the questions adequately. He had a good demeanor and he was very knowledgeable about education.
Does anybody have any questions for Senator Johnson or myself, or does anybody wish to make a statement? Okay, Senator Wiggins.
Just a statement, Mr. Chairman. I don't know where the vote is on this, but I think as people have heard from me, I personally am, which I think other members have heard feel this way, am not, well, I'd say I'm disgusted at how the process went by the state board. It was not transparent. There was this committee and the Senate was taken for granted. And anybody that follows the Education Committee in particular knows we take our job seriously. And for the state board to think that something's going to be either rubber stamped or that they can sit in a room and just pick and choose without going through the proper steps, I think is a very problematic issue. And yesterday you said such issues can be addressed, and we may be looking at that. So I appreciate the chairman doing that, but I just wanted to make that statement. I appreciate you giving me the chance to do that.
Thank you, Senator Wiggins. Senator Hobson or Senator Bryan. I'm getting all confused. It's late in the session, apparently.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm ahead of you. I got confused earlier in the session. In fact, I was confused when I got here. And while we're on the topic, I'm still confused. I really do not understand the obsession with the process used by the State Board of Education. The State Board of Education was set up in the Constitution in 1982 as a result of the education laws that were being passed when Governor Winter was governor. And the State Board of Education was set up for the purpose of promoting education in Mississippi and trying to get a more professional group to try to remove education somewhat from the political process, because the previous state school board had been 3 elected statewide officials. This board has constitutional authority to run the State Department of Education and choose the state superintendent of education. I find it odd that we would substitute our judgment for their judgment about how to choose the state superintendent. I must say, it's really somewhat perplexing for me to hear the previous speaker say that he was disgusted that this committee was taken for granted. How was this committee taken for granted? That they could sit in a room and pick and choose someone, and as he phrased it, not go through the proper steps. Who's to say what the proper steps are? But I will say this interest in process is a novel concern of this committee. Just recently, we have confirmed the nomination of Jim Beckett to be director of the public utility staff. I don't think there was any inquiry about the process that the governor went through before deciding that one of his political allies who was a member of the legislature would be appointed to that job. We've confirmed Sally Doty to be the public utilities staff director before Mr. Beckett. And I don't think there was a lot of angst about whether the governor went through the proper process and a transparent process before he chose a political ally who was his supporter to be a head of the public, member of the legislature, to be a head of the public utility staff. We've confirmed Chris Graham to be head of the Department of Revenue. For that, I believe former Representative Frierson was head of the Department of Revenue. And I don't remember all this concern about the process that the governor went through before making those appointments. We confirmed Brad White to be director of the Department of Transportation, who just happened to be Governor Reeves' chief of staff at the time. I don't remember going through a bunch of turmoil about whether they'd used the proper process to come up with Mr. White, nor, by the way, do I think there was a lot of turmoil about Mr. White having lived outside the state of Mississippi for a number of years before he came back and got a government job of all terrible things. The objections that are being raised to this particular confirmation and the objections to the process seem to be a novel concern. And they seem to be focused only on this one individual and this one nomination. That strikes me as odd. I would say that this State Board of Education was appointed by Republican governors, speakers, and lieutenant governors. This individual is their unanimous choice that they've chosen, which the Constitution gives them the authority to do, this individual. If there were substantive objections to the individual, then those should have been articulated. That's what we should have been talking about. We could discuss those. But all I hear is this endless discussion about process. We are at, I believe, a very critical time in this state for education, and in particular for the State Department of Education. I think a number of us are unhappy with some things over at the department. I'll just mention in particular, gathering and making available data. I've held forth a number of times about the department not knowing how much a teacher pay raise cost, but apart from that, there's all manner of data they need to collect from schools about attendance, expenditures, on and on. That data needs to be accurate. There's many people have many different views about public education, what we ought to do, how we ought to fund it. I've yet to encounter anybody who thinks we ought to make those decisions with improper data and improper information collected for us. They're not getting the data right. They're not getting the data from the schools. And when they get it, they're not analyzing it properly. That's a serious problem. That's going to take some work over at the department. It's going to take somebody who's the permanent head to do it. Public education, I mean, you look at where we are at this point in the legislative session, needs an advocate who can support it. And we're going to be sitting here, if this nomination fails, without anyone to perform that for at least a year. I don't think we've got a year to waste. And I would just ask members to think about what education is going to be, what shape education is going to be in what shape the department's going to be in, if in fact it goes for a year without a leader. I also would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we need to think about who might hold this job and how it will be possible to find someone to hold this job if in fact this individual is not confirmed. We have an individual to whom there has been articulated no clear-cut objection, an individual who's moved here in good faith from out of state and gone to work. It's almost cruel not to confirm the nomination. But Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, I think it's in the best interest of education and in the best interest of the State Department of Education and the best interest of the state of Mississippi that we confirm this individual. Thank you.
May I close, Mr. Chairman?
Senator Wiggins.
Thank you. Senator Bryan, who I extremely respect and has been through many more confirmations than I have, makes some good points. However, the difference with this one, number one, is that we have a peer report that was brought out at the hearing. And the subcommittee chairman said wanted transparency. And that we use peer reports and we respect those, and that's valuable. So that's a difference. Then the confirmation is a unique, we can have a discussion about checks and balances, but there is no limit on what we use for our decisions in deciding on confirmations. And I agree, Dr. Taylor is a wonderful person. And Senator Bryan, you rightfully say there are problems admitted at the department. I think this just shows there's another one, not with Dr. Taylor, but with the process. And at what point are we going to have the confirmation process respected? Or are we rubber stamping? Each senator, it's up to each senator's individual decision-making authority that they've been sent here by their constituents to decide. And to your point, it is very bad that he's in this situation, but you know who put him here? The board. The board did. And I would, for one, said I appreciated him coming here. And so the decision, but is that reason enough to confirm our constitutional duty that we've been given, that nobody else in the three branches has been given? And sorry, but when Rosemary stood up there, it became clear to me what this process was. And I heard through different ones that she told that, oh, don't worry about confirmation. It's a foregone conclusion. We are senators. We have a constitutional duty to do our job, and we are given that. So I do respect, and honestly, this is probably a discussion about checks and balances and what each person has. But let it be known that it's not Dr. Taylor, it's the board. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing the comments.
Thank you, Senator Wiggins. Senator Norwood, I think you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too have no idea what the outcome may be, but I've had an opportunity to meet and conversate with Dr. Taylor. Find him to be a man of great integrity, a man that has risen from the hollows of education. In many cases, pulled himself up by his bootstraps to where he is today. And while I've heard a lot about the process, and I've heard some things about the person. some things that I understand that Dr. Taylor may have said some 30 years ago. And he explained those things to certainly my satisfaction and many other satisfaction. Now the board, I respect the board members. I know many of them. Go back to many conversations that I had with them while I was on the board of Jackson Public School. I trust them. And I feel that if they, as I shared with Dr. McGehee and Mayor Altman during the conversation here, I trust them, and I'm very confident that if they are making this recommendation with the work that they have done in the community, the education arena, that I'm not in a position to question why they made the decision, because I feel very comfortable that they made the decision based on the information that was presented to them and the references. So I think that as a body, we have to be honest with ourselves. Is it personal, or is it a person? Is it the person, or is it the process? And I think that I'm sure, should Dr. Taylor not be confirmed, he's gonna go on with his life. And we have to go on with the decision that we make and why we made the decision that we made. Certainly, he moved here, yes. This is his home. He said he had been away for 30 years and wanted to come back home and wanted to contribute to the further growth of our state in the field of education. And I think that it would send an absolute terrible message if we, after being selected by a board that had no connectivity to this body, and make the recommendation, and if we would deny him that opportunity, I think, again, let us think, there are a lot of processes that I don't agree with here, but at the end of the day, not at the expense of a person. And I think that finally, we look back. Let's look at is this about the process or is it about the person? And at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, I would like for us to have a roll call vote to basically put it on record as to how we support or fail to support this issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Norwood. All right, I'll recognize you, but don't say anything that's going to provoke Senator Wiggins, because we don't want to be here all day, okay?
Well, I was bemused that Senator Wiggins asked recognition to close, and bless his heart, he's always going to be a prosecutor, and he just thinks, being the prosecution, he always gets to close on every issue. It ain't your motion, But Mr. Chairman, I just want to make this point, and I think it's a very important one. This committee has exactly one peer committee report about this matter. It's the report that's before you today. This peer committee report does not say one word about process, but it does say Dr. Taylor's appointment complies with applicable state law. The peer committee will answer a question if a legislator asks a question. The legislator asked the question, could this have been more transparent? And the peer committee, as they'll do for any of us, answered the question with something that said on it, this is not a peer committee report. This is an answer to legislative request for information. It does not represent the position of the peer committee. They said, yes, the appointment process could have been more transparent. If I'd asked them to do a report about whether the process could have been quicker, they would have prepared a similar report and said, yeah, it would have been quicker if they had not taken so much time with the process. So that is not a peer committee report. It is an answer to a specific question asked by a specific legislator. This is the peer committee report, right? And it says not one word about the process. It says his appointment complies with applicable state law. I would just say whatever conversations Ms. Altman may or may not have had, I don't recollect Mr. Beckett or Mr. White or Mr. Gresham or Mr. Doty having any conversations with the appropriate committee before their appointment. They were appointed. Governor certainly didn't check with me to see how I'd vote before he made the appointment. And having made his appointment, our recollection is these nominees did the same thing Dr. Taylor did, which was meet with the various members of the committee and the various members of the Senate and ask for their support. But I just am bewildered by the notion that somehow it's offensive to this committee that the board made an appointment without, as it were, pre-clearing it with us. That's not what I view the role of confirmation to be. Thank you. He looks very calm, Mr. Chair.
Just let it go. Anybody else? I think Senator Hill.
Yesterday was a short time away. If I remember correctly, the biggest objections against Kara Powell that we failed to confirm were that she has not been active in Mississippi schools. I got a text from somebody in DeSoto County that says, please do not support Kara Powell for State Board of Education. It's amazing that she seeks an appointment to our state school board when she has, to my knowledge, not been active in any of our Mississippi schools. DeSoto County has the best schools in the state, and of all the great educators from DeSoto County and the rest of the state, we do not need someone that works for the state of Tennessee to represent and make important decisions about our schools. So we could say the same thing about this school board appointment that we're seeing today. Out of all the people and all the great educators in the state of Mississippi, the school board seemed to not be able to find one person that's invested their time and their work in the state of Mississippi schools. So we disqualified one person because, quote, they didn't work in Mississippi schools, yet their kids attended Mississippi schools and they lived in Mississippi for all their life, most of their life. But yet we want to defend an out-of-state decision for a more important position, in my opinion, than a state school board member. And that's all I have to say.
Senator McClendon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Hill. I agree 100%. That was my entire objection to the school board appointment. When you had 4,500 school employees in one school district, in one county, and you overlooked each and every one of them. That's not counting the retirees that have retired there and lived there. Not one. And I felt it was a slap in the face to every single one of those employees. It goes to the same right here. I don't know how many number of employees we have in Mississippi education system. If we're going to go outside the state, I think it should be the golden egg that we go and search for. I had dinner with Dr. Taylor. A fine man. I admire his family. This is nothing personal with me, but it's absolutely what this Capitol needs is to stay consistent with your votes. And I will be staying consistent with mine. Thank you.
I don't know. I don't know if I should do this, Senator Bryan. Every time you speak, we get something else,
Well, I just wanted to say about the concern about.
but
the-
I'll recognize you anyways.
Okay, but all I want to say, Mr. Chair, is with the concern about the individual being out of state, if that's individuals' positions, that's a position they can have and vote that way. That doesn't have anything to do with process. But I would point out that if you looked at our history of state superintendents of education, quite a few of them, and I just can't remember them all because my memory's not what it once was, are not from the state of Mississippi. The notion that we have to employ someone from the state of Mississippi is an insular requirement. I thought that we wanted to have nationwide searches, but maybe we need to enforce this standard of looking inside the state of Mississippi more carefully. And let's stop allowing all these athletic teams to get these coaches who have no connection to the state of Mississippi. Why is it an insult to every single football coach in the state of Mississippi when they go out of the state and find somebody with no connection at all to Mississippi just to come here and coach football team? This is a novel position to take for this one and only position. But if that's a position of people, that's their business. Thank you.
May I close?
Thank you, Senator Bryan. Anybody have any questions, or Senator Norwood?
Right. I'd just like to say, for the record, Dr. Taylor did grow up in Mississippi. He attended Laura, the schools in Jones County, Laura, and he graduated from the University of Southern Mississippi. He expressed, what took him away from here, his wife's career. But at the end of the day, he has a stellar academic. He has spent his entire life in academics. And so I could not compare his credentials to the individuals that are being nominated for the state board, because they are nowhere similar in terms of their engagement in academics. So just for the record.
Senator Hill, briefly. Well, I think I'm gonna recognize Senator Johnson. Do you have a motion? What's your motion?
Motion is to advise and consent.
You've heard the motion by Senator Johnson. Everybody ready to vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? I think the ayes have it. Ayes have it. All right, Senator Johnson, you have a motion. Rise and report. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Ayes have it.